Welcome back to the first 42K podcast. And today I am so excited because I'm talking to an ultra endurance athlete and someone who's been a big friend and mentor for me. Dave Alley, welcome.
Hey Sean, thanks for having me.
Mate, thanks for coming on. It's really exciting to have you on to just learn from you and to be able to share your wisdom with others. You've accomplished some incredible feats. You're the fastest person to run around Australia, also to cycle around Australia, and you have something big lined up for the end of the year as well.
Yeah, exciting times ahead. Thought I was retired, but there's a comeback.
So good. What's ahead this year?
Mate, this year, looking in October, November to have a shot at the record to kayak the Murray River, Australia's longest river.
Awesome. How far?
2,400 kilometres.
Huge. So what will the days look like? How long will you be kayaking per day?
Big days, big days, similar to the bike ride actually for me. So to get the record, it's 16 days, 6 hours and 58 minutes. So if you break that down to a daily target, it's 145 kilometres a day, which for me will be I'm gathering the 15 to 17 hour range of out in the boat each day.
Huge. So what do you reckon sleep time will be in between?
So look, at this stage, I'm toying with how I'm going to structure the day, but I'll probably have an 8-hour stint at the start of the day, have a 1 hour break where hopefully I can get up to 30 minutes sleep there. Then another 8-hour stint after that. So 4 to 5 hours in a stint. Yeah, not a huge amount.
Definitely not. Well, mate, as I said, so good to have you on. And, I know you do a lot. You work full time in your own PT business, mindset, health and fitness. You're a speaker, a father of 5. You fit a lot in.
Yeah, mate. I need a new hobby.
Where's this passion come from with endurance and adventure? Have you always had it since you were little?
Look, I think for me, I've always loved sport from as far back as I can remember. And I think for me, where it really kicked off the ultra endurance stuff was back when I had twins born prematurely, and that was a real life changing moment for me in many regards, and really tough period. It was touch and go whether they'd both make it for a while. So we had 3 months in intensive care with them, and the hospital, they were born in the Mater Hospital in Brisbane, and then we were transferred to John Flynn on the Gold Coast, and that was a game changer for me. And just to see the staff, and they'd done so much for us as parents, and to get the kids to where they were, and I wanted to do a thank you for them, was essentially how it started. And the idea was I was hopeless at endurance sport, so loved sport. Cricket was my game as a young guy growing up, but hopeless at endurance sport. And I thought, there's a challenge. What's the toughest one-day event you can do? And I thought it has to be an Ironman triathlon. I could barely swim. I didn't own a bike, but I could shuffle along the road. And I went to my local pool. I swam a lap of 50 metres and I almost drowned. And I thought, you've got a long way to go, mate. And it was really from there. So I think that, and I managed to qualify. Back in those days, you had to qualify for Port Macquarie, Ironman Australia. I did that, completed the Ironman just to get through it, and finished. And I guess I was bitten by the bug.
Yeah, unreal. And how many years prior was that Ironman to then taking on this bike ride around Australia?
So that was 2006, I believe the Ironman was. And then the first lap around Australia was 2011. So there's a bit of 5-year gap there.
Yeah, well, there's so much that goes into it, right? The planning, the logistics, it's huge. It's not just the physical and mental prep.
That's exactly right, mate. Yeah, look, I used to say it's a full-time job. So there's the physical preparation, but as you touched on, logistics is a huge issue and a whole different beast within itself.
Definitely. So the ride around Australia raised money for the Royal Flying Doctor Service, and how was that experience for you?
Yeah, look, it was great. I think the bike ride, again, what was happening there is that I was going to go with my best mate. I was going to ride about 100 kilometres a day. We'd raised money for a charity that was close to both of us. At the time, I was a police officer. My best mate was a school principal. We thought we'd go around Australia together on an adventure. No records, just to experience it, And Look, it really just grew legs. We went to the University of Queensland. The head of sports science there, a guy called Vince Kelly, came on board and did some physical testing, and the results came back and things were looking good, and it just grew legs. And next minute it turned into, hey, look, is there a record for such a thing? And look, my mate and the manager of the trip went away and came back, and he said to me, look, what do you think? And I said, oh, look, I don't think I think 200 kilometres a day would be the limit, of what the human body is capable of. And he said, well, first I'll dangle the carrot. There's no Australians in the top 5. And I went, oh, okay, you've got my attention. And then he said, the record's held by a Canadian by the name of Perry Stone. He did it in 41 days and 5 minutes, and he rode 341 kilometres a day on average. And we literally just laughed at each other, and we went, let's go back to plan A. But then that's when the mindset kicked in and really changed for me. So I went home and thought about it and went, okay, let's break this down. And I contacted the record holder, and he was great with supplying information. And he said, look, Dave, I rode at about 25 kilometres an hour for about 15 hours a day. And I thought, I can ride at 25 kilometres an hour, but I can't do it for 15 hours a day on one day. But I really broke it down, and I went out and I rode for 1 hour at 25 kilometres an hour. And I was like, wow, okay. And then it just built and built and built from there. And look, we did a trial run. Everyone remember the devastating floods in Queensland that year, and the loss of life. And that week we planned a trial, and I did a loop around Queensland and had a crew formed at this stage. Off we went, and we had a minimum of 100 millimetres of rain every day. The wind, it was just horrendous conditions. But I came back from that trial under world record pace, and then a real belief was formed amongst not only me but the crew that, hey, hang on a minute, we can pull this off.
So good. Wow, it's incredible. And now to look back and be like, we've done this. And it really is such a team effort. Like, I love how much you reference your crew there. Talk to me about team. How big of a role does team play for you?
Oh, huge. It's make or break, really. For me, I always reference the records as ours rather than mine, because I truly believe that. It was a real team effort. And look, I think it's the thing I'm most proud of is that, look, records come and go, but the adventure of it and sharing that experience with a unique group, and we were able to stay together for the whole journey, and still, all friends to this day. And to just extract 100% out of each and every one of us to achieve a common goal is what sticks with me the most and what I'm most proud of.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that it's the friendships that you look back on, you're like, we are closer than ever now. And, because sometimes when people do take on these big physical feats, that's when, things can break down because it's so hard. Obviously, the person who is out the front as the athlete, they're in a completely different headspace, and it takes a very strong crew. And I remember having some discussions with you around this, like, choose your crew smart and be careful and always obviously be respectful and give all crew members the best attitude you possibly can. And I was very conscious of that. And, now I'm closer with Maxi, my best mate, who came on my Cairns to Melbourne run last year than ever before. So that's pretty cool to me. And I think team really is huge. So, mate, there's so much to dive into, really. It's just, your resume is unbelievable. But I really want to talk about the run. I want to talk about the run because obviously it's just an enormous feat, and so many people would have told you that you couldn't do it, and you did it. How was the run for you?
Yeah, look, I think that was one of the motivating factors was every medical specialist I went to after the bike and I told them of the plan of the run, said it can't be done, all bar one. And that was a great mate of mine who's a GP, who also specialises in bones. And he said to me, he looked me in the eye and he said, Dave, I know you can do this. And that's all I needed was that one person. Everyone else had written it off and said, because at that stage I hadn't run a step for over 5 years. The focus was the bike ride, and that's all I was doing. Running wasn't even on the radar. And Yeah, look, I, through inexperience, started off with too much enthusiasm and stepped from the bike. And in a very short period of time, the idea of the run was born. And I went out and my initial thinking was, it was all centred around pace. You know, every runner is always thinking about their pace and they're always watching the clock, and I was no different. And I went out and the attitude was, okay, if I can run at my normal marathon pace, I need to do roughly 2 marathons a day. But if I go out and I can maintain that pace, then I'll be finished at like lunchtime, just after lunch, which gives me all afternoon, that evening to recover before I have to start running the next day. And that's the mentality I went into, and I learnt very quickly and the hard way that that's not how the human body works. And I started with stress fractures in my right leg, and I pushed on thinking that, look, this is just something you have to work through. You're adapting from cycling to running, and ended up broke my right leg, not once, not twice, but 3 times. And each time I came back too early and too hard, and then had discussions with my GP friend and bone specialist, and he said, it's all about the pace. You've got to cut your pace. And I did that, and in his opinion, it was about a 2-year process to get my body to adapt and the bones to adapt and the muscles and all the structures of the body to adapt to the load of the running. And it was almost to the day, 2 years later, where I felt in that comfortable space and I was able to go out and cover the big distances that I was required to do.
Yeah, incredible. Well, to give people context, I didn't spell out the numbers. So 13,791 kilometres in 175 days, 4 hours and 49 minutes. Huge. Raised money for the White Cloud Foundation, which supports Australians living with depression and anxiety, and broke Ron Grant's record to become the fastest man to run around Australia. So, mate, it's so special for me to have this conversation with you. Obviously, reached out to you in 2018. It was August 2018. I came up on a family holiday, watching the Tigers versus Suns up here on the Gold Coast. And my brother and I, Chris, we went down on the bus to meet you in northern New South Wales. And yeah, I can't thank you enough for how supportive you've been of me. I think so often when people approach someone with the same goal, you know, a lot of people are surprised with how supportive you've been. And I was like, it's just who he is as a person. He's a great person. And I think that, you know, you have really been able to instill some confidence in me by just being so supportive. So, mate, firstly, thanks for that. And secondly, yeah, it's a huge journey to take on next year. And I think it's changed a little bit. Like when I reached out to you in 2018, it wasn't going to be a record attempt. It was just to honour my late friend and footy teammate who passed away and support a charity close to my heart. But as I've got a bit stronger and older, you do more of these things, you start to believe you can. So, mate, I'm incredibly excited for next year.
Yeah, so am I, mate. It brings back so many great memories for me. And like I said, records come and go. One thing I guess that's important, has always been important to me, is I knew at some point someone was going to have an attempt and we'll beat it. You know, it's inevitable with all records, you know. But I wanted it to be a good person, you know, and I'm so glad that you're having a go at this. It means a lot to me. And I kind of flip now to more of, that's who I'd rather be remembered as someone that, you know, has given back to the sports and the ultra endurance world, which has given me so much. The experiences, the memories, the people that I've met, that's the stuff that sticks with you, you know. And, you know, being here today, we wouldn't be here together today if it wasn't for ultra endurance sport and running. And that's the stuff I really love. And look, if I can give back to the sport, if I can give back to good people and help them on their journey, then that's what it's all about for me.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Well, yeah, so well said. And I think, you know, paying it forward in that way is so incredible. I had Sam Gash on the podcast recently and she spoke about that. In our very first meeting as well, she was just so giving with her time and energy. And it's like, well, she had so much help getting to that point at the start, you know, for her to become that athlete. And so then wants to pay it forward as well, which you've done so much. So just unreal. Mate, where are you at now? I mean, obviously, as you said, going into a huge challenge at the end of the year. We'll come back to the run, but I want to talk a little bit more about the training and the preparation for the challenge at the current day.
Yeah, so the kayak. So I guess it started very much like the cycle in that running my personal training business at home, and I was just looking for something a bit left field with my own training, and wanted to mix things up. And my wife actually suggested to me that, look, you bought this kayak a couple of years ago and it's basically sat down by the side of the house and collected cobwebs. Why don't you give that a go? And I live very close to the creek. And so off I went in the kayak and just went out for a few paddles, very light, just to experience something different. And I loved it. I just fell in love with the sport, and I loved the feeling of being in the boat and on my own and out in nature and on the river. And I had an idea, so I went to Dave Lees, the manager of the previous 2 trips, and I said, mate, I hope you're sitting down. I've got an idea. And he said, yeah, what have you got? And I said, look, I've got a bit of the bug back, but what I'd like to do is these things have been centered around me, right, in the past, and I want us to come together and do something together. And I've got an idea. Let's paddle the Murray River. It's Australia's longest river. Let's go together just as 2 friends to tie things up. And look, if we paddle 10 kilometres one day and we've had enough, we'll pull up and we'll take our own gear and we'll just go on an adventure, 2 mates, which was very much the bike ride. And he sat in silence for a while, and then he said, mate, I'm in. I love it. Let's do this, but there's one condition. And I said, what's that? And he said, mate, I'm not paddling. You're paddling this. And he said, surely there's a record, right, for the Murray River. And I said, oh, we're not going down that path again, are we? And look, it grew legs, and as the bike and the run did, and I went out and got a bit more serious about it. And yeah, look, I'm still in early stages. This one's a little bit different for me in that there are a couple of key factors. And look, it was the time frame. So the Murray was great in that the record's 16 days. So look, give 3 or 4 weeks at the most and the event's done. I'm at that stage now. I couldn't go away for 6 months again from the family. That was really tough for me with the 5 kids and wife. That was tough. So it had to be something that fitted into a time frame, as well as having the business. And look, we just we're planning away. Again, the cycle was a 3 to 4 year preparation. The run was a 4 year preparation. This is a 1 year preparation.
Yeah.
So big difference. And my thinking around that is the reality is I'm so thankful that my body's held up and I'm able to do this, but I'm also 47 as well too. So if I have a 3 or 4 year preparation for the kayak, I'm 50. And so I wanted to make the most of it. And also that's part of the challenge as well too. It's a whole different sport for me. It's something totally fresh. I'm learning something new. I'm invigorated by it. I'm excited by it. I'm challenged by it. And I think when you break it down, I just thrive on that, leaving my comfort zone. I'm someone, I know that I'm not myself if I'm in my comfort zone. I love to push the boundaries. And look, it's going to be tough. The weather's a big factor on this one. The weather's huge. The flow of the river is a massive factor. So I've got a big 8 months ahead of me to prepare for this one.
Huge. Well, what I love about it is it's like you're not just sticking to your strengths. Like right now, I'd say, as a runner, I'm a strong runner, but I'm not swimming, and I'm a terrible swimmer. And that's one of my goals in the future is to do an Ironman and attack that. But I love how, you really are an ultra endurance athlete, not an ultra marathon runner. Often people describe me as an endurance athlete. I'm like, right now I'd say I'm an ultra marathon runner.
Yeah.
So I love that there's different dimensions, and I love that, you're attacking something that, as you said, you picked up the kayak, it was collecting cobwebs, and you're out there and a year later it's grown legs into something so big. So is this one a charity event as well, or not a charity fundraiser?
Not this one, yeah. This one, look, we decided to do it, just as a group of mates. I've got 6 crew, and we went, you know what, this time we're going to go out and just do it because we want to do it. We love adventure. I love the camaraderie. And a big thing for the manager and I is our dads join us on these trips, and that's huge for me. So that bonding experience with my dad who's come on both trips, mate, it's just, you can't put it into words. It's just something that's so special, and he's coming again, you know. Dad's 73 soon, next month, and I floated the idea to him, and look, he said, "Matt, son, you're mad, and what are you doing that for? And oh God, have you thought about this and thought about that? And when are we going?" So it'll be great to have that as well too.
Yeah, that's so special. That's beautiful. I think, yeah, family is everything, and to be able to share that experience with your dad, just amazing. With the, I guess, preparation, like, does it look different? Obviously, you're spending so much time in the kayak, but is there much strength training involved as well? I imagine there would have to be.
Yeah, look, there is more strength-based training this time than what I've done in previous events. And it's a real juggling act this time, I find, because I am older, that recovery time stretches out. So for me, it's getting the body as prepared as I can be. I know the mind will be okay. The sleep deprivation, we've done all those things before. They're really tough, but I know I can get through that. But it's getting the body right in a totally different sport. So cycling and running, obviously all lower body, leg-based, right? And in the kayak, it's core, it's upper body, and I've already got a bit of a niggle. I'm off to the physio after we speak today, actually, to deal with a shoulder issue. So it's strength-based training. It's compared to the cycle and run, it's, you know, the cycle and the run for me was basically all cycling, all running. It was getting the mileage up, whereas this is playing a little bit smarter. Yeah. So looking at that strength base and knowing that the strength base is such a valuable component of this, building up the endurance. And it's also a tough one with weight too. So I'm probably 5 or 6 kilos over peak, but then knowing the calorie deficit that's going to occur on this one too, it's probably going in just a few kilos over, knowing that within a day or two that's going to be gone too. So yeah, it's a real juggling act, and again, being new to the sport, it's all the learnings that come with us, and getting feedback from the professionals and taking that advice on board, and then going out and practicing it in the field, you know, and adapting it to me.
Yeah, well, it's super smart. I think I had a conversation recently with Bonnie Hancock, who I know is a friend of yours, and what she just did was unbelievable with the circumnavigation of Australia in a ski paddle, and just huge. And yeah, she spoke about going in, putting on some weight beforehand, just knowing that on the other side you can't, or during the run I should say, or your event, you just can't keep going with it. like the amount of calories out versus in, it's just so hard to replace. So I think that's a really good plan. And I'm always just really interested from a strength training point of view. It's my running coach background and PT background, where I'm just really intrigued, because I think for you to be able to achieve these feats, strength has to play such a big role. And I know that you and I train quite differently. Like, even for the prep for Cairns to Melbourne, my mileage was sort of 80 to 100K weeks of running. And you talked about huge mileage and not so much strength training. Yeah,
it is. It's, I think it's taking advice on board from everyone. Yeah. And then look, some of that advice is just not going to work for you. You know, it's, I love to take it all on board, and I respect and get everyone's opinion, and then I think it's going out and practicing that in the field and then adapting that to you. You know, we're all a little bit different with how we respond to different forms of training, and I think it's getting it right for you. So, yeah, for me, the run was all about mileage. That was it. You know, I was doing 300 plus kilometre weeks some weeks. It was big weeks on the road, you know, and that was working full time and shift work as well too. So it was often 2-3 o'clock in the morning in Brisbane, and I was off running a marathon, but it was nothing to run a marathon and go to work and rinse and repeat and that sort of thing. And look, I think we evolved too. See, the runs, it's only 2015, but see, things have changed so much since then too. And there's been a lot more studies, there's a lot more information available. And yeah, look, I think it's take that all in and adapt it to you. Yeah, for sure. With the run, what was the biggest challenge you faced out there? Look, constant battle of injury, I think, was the biggest one. I never had one blister in my preparation in the 3-4 years. I did not have one blister. 2 weeks into the run, and I was covered in blisters, my feet. And I think the canver of the road in the Northern Territory was tough because they have the roads built on such an angle to deal with the wet season and the trucks, so they were able to travel through. It was really tough dealing with that. The heat, the cold. But I think my biggest issue, which basically almost brought it to a stop, was a toe infection of all things. So perfect breeding ground for infection, socks in shoes all day. And I got an infection in my big toe, which started to spread up through my leg. And I ended up in Port Hedland Hospital. And of course, being part of the record is you have to cover at least 20 kilometres a day. And to get into the hospital up there and told that by a doctor that the run was over was brutal. And, some tough decisions had to be made. And, yeah.
And you said to the doctor, thanks for that, I'm going to go do another 20.
Well, I actually, he was liaising with my doctor back on the East Coast who was pleading with him. And in the end, I discharged myself that night and slept on the side of the road. And the next morning we travelled back. Half the crew, or one of the crew came with me. The other crew remained at the spot where I was taken from, and that was a 150-kilometre drive. So we drove the 150 kilometres back, and for the next week I hobbled up the road. And my wife had flown a doctor over from the East Coast, and he operated in the caravan on the side of the road, took toenails off and cut into the toe. And, yeah, look, it was tough. It was a tough week, let me tell you. And I was covering sort of 40 to 50 Ks those days, and I was literally just hobbling. There wasn't any running just to get through it.
Yeah, incredible. So, so that's, I guess, your approach with this sort of thing. And same with the bike ride. It's not the run, the ride, and I'm sure the kayak later this year. It's like you very much go by feel. So when you're strong, you keep going?
Yeah, absolutely, mate. It's a big one. And the advantage we've got with these types of events is the clock's continually ticking, right? But you get to structure the day however you like.
Yeah.
You can run early if that's your strength. You can break in the middle of the day. You can run in the evening. You can go straight through. And I very much am an advocate for go by how you feel on the day, because it can change so much. And the other factors as well, like the weather. Up the top end, we had days where it was 47 degrees, and then down across the Nullarbor, we had days of -5 and it was raining. So it's really adapting to your body and what it's telling you, and just taking that all on board, and then just adjust your day accordingly. And, look, there'll be shorter days, there'll be longer days. But it's a tough balancing act to get the most out of each day, but then be able to back it up the next day, right? And that's the difficult thing. It's not a one-day event. It's a...
because if you go too far one day, then that might cost you the next day.
That's right, yeah. And it's tempting to push on and do huge, 100-kilometre days, but it comes at a cost too.
So true. What was your favourite thing about the run, or what did you enjoy the most?
I think what an amazing way to see Australia.
Yeah.
I'm a very passionate Australian, and I love the country and just the diversity of the scenery and the people, and that's what sticks with me the most. Yeah, and then the game really changes when you turn off the East Coast at Townsville and you start heading inland. And for a lot of people, that's where they really struggle mentally because of the isolation. But that's where I thrived, and I loved it. I loved being in the outback. I love the Northern Territory. I love the top end of WA. Scenery, the people, the team.
Yeah, I remember you were telling me once, like, it was just, at the end of the day, you've been running all day and coming into like sunset with your best mate. It's those sort of moments, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd often have best mate out on the bike, and I'd get him out there some days and say, talk to me about anything but running, and we just bring up old stories. And we were literally, we're 400 Ks from the next town. There's no one out there except for us. And we're just, two mates on this adventure. Just awesome.
Mate, one thing that I absolutely hate, one of my biggest fears, is snakes. I remember we had a conversation, you were telling me about some of the snakes that come out on the roads. around that sunset time.
Yeah, you'll get used to those. We had in a few places in the top end where I had to get the support vehicle to do a sweep through on the road because I came very close on a number of occasions of stepping on a snake right on that. It's just so difficult to see, and especially at night, and they come out and want to lay on the warm bitumen, and here I am out on my own, and there's a couple of close calls, but the pace picked up.
I bet it did. What's the come down like? Obviously, on an event so big, and you would have had it on the ride as well, but particularly with the run being close to 6 months in nature, I guess that adjustment period of coming back to normal life and also just finally being able to rest.
Yeah, look, it's a huge thing for athletes, is that coming down, and luckily for me, I never really had that mentally. I came home and I had that feeling of just real satisfaction and pride in what I'd achieved and the team had achieved, and I didn't really have that downtime mentally. But for me, to this day, it still affects me in that we finished the run amongst all the fanfare. We stayed in a hotel in Lismore, and the next morning my wife wanted to go to a shopping centre, and I went over there and I walked in to the shopping centre, and she said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Oh, no, I need to go outside. I can't." There was so many people and too much stimulus, There was music playing and there was people everywhere and there was bright lights, and I just wasn't able to cope with that. And I said, "Oh, I'm fine, but I'm going to go and sit out." And I sat across the road under a gum tree, and that's where I sat, And to this day, I love just being out in nature, and I think it's all a result of that.
Definitely. And do you still feel a little bit affected by all that?
Yeah.
Like, you still feel when you go into shopping centres and these busy places, it's harder?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I do find that difficult in crowded environments and where there's a lot of stimulus and noise, because of having that such a long period of not having that. And it was almost like a mechanical lifestyle, I'd call it, where it was just eat, sleep, recovery, run, and rinse and repeat every day. And, look, coming back physically was 6 months before I could dress myself. Wow. So I don't want to put you off here, but
but these are the things I need to know. I love it. It's,
one of the regrets I have is not having a recovery plan sorted out before I got back, and I kind of just winged it, and I really paid for that. I paid the price for that, and I seized up my hips, my lower back.
As in, did you try and get into training too quickly on the way back, or what do you mean?
So I was sleeping a lot. I was really fatigued, and my body, I didn't have a plan, so I just go by how I felt. So I wasn't running at all. So I went from running those huge days, 175 in a row, to stopping, and that was it. And my body was kind of shutting down, I guess you'd say. And I had no flexibility, no range of movement at all, especially my lower back and hips. And I couldn't even, to put a pair of pants on or shoes and socks just was impossible. So I had my wife dressing me for about 6 months, and then trying to go back to work, and, of course, trying to put a gun belt on as well when I was in the police. It was really tough. So there's some good advice there, is have that recovery plan in place for when you get back, because I think everyone that does these type of things, do you ever go back to 100% normal? I don't think I did, to be honest. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. Like you spoke about before it, how you went into university and had that fitness testing, which I think is incredible. I didn't do that before Cairns to Melbourne. It's something I definitely want to do before next year's run. But even on the other side, like incredibly dumb, I know it is, but I haven't even had my bloods taken or checked since my run. And I did before the run to know where I was at, but I haven't even been to a doctor since. I'm like, no, I feel fine. You know, but I think athletes need to do more in that, like really just respect what they've put themselves through and go and get those tests and do what you need to do.
Yeah, that's right, mate. It's just dotting the I's, crossing your T's and everything you can think of. And look, if you go and get that feedback, you know, you get to choose what you do with it. But look, it's important to think of all the what ifs. I say to people is think of all the what ifs and try and tick those off. And especially when you're out on the road, it's the constant risk assessment. You know, every day is you're playing a risk assessment through your mind, and some of this, it's dangerous stuff. What
Absolutely.
we do, not only to our body, but you're out on the road and there's vehicles and people to contend with, and especially in the remote areas, the last thing people are expecting as they come around the corner is to see some crazy guy running down the road, So it's, that constant risk assessment is important.
Yeah, so true. And how about mentally? I mean, you said you didn't feel too affected, which is great on the way back after the run. But did you have I know one thing Ned Brockman's been quite open about is PTSD on the other side of his run across Australia that he recently did, and talking about having dreams of or nightmares of road trains and that sort of thing. Did that really affect you after the run?
Yeah, look. I definitely there was dreams and things, but it was all more positive for me. I don't know, but I think having that policing background probably helped in that regard. I'm grateful I did. I think other crew did as well. I think it's important for your crew as well. It's not easy for everyone. When you're out there, it's tough. It's really tough. And I think it affects people in different ways. But I feel really fortunate that, it didn't affect me in that way. I just felt, and I guess having done the bike before, I just felt as though I was done.
Yeah.
There was no ever plans for number 3. I felt like I was done and I was happy, but I also had things to move on to, which is important too. So, I was going back to work, love my family. I had them to go home to. I had work to go back to. I had other things to look forward to. And I think that's really important as well too, is to have that, not only your recovery plan sorted for when you get back, but it's before you go is, okay, what's the plan? When I get back, what am I going to do? And so many people don't think that far ahead and they don't know what they're going to do. And they've had this, 100% focus on this goal for so long, over a period of years, and then the event happens. And you see this with a lot of professional athletes is they leave their sport and they've had this focus and they've had this attention on them for so long, and then overnight it's gone. And it can be tough.
Yeah, for sure. I think obviously my Cairns to Melbourne run was just 2 months, so nowhere near the time frame. But even with that, probably didn't really consider that time away from family. And then 3 weeks after that, I moved to the Gold Coast, and all my family are based in Melbourne. And probably 3 or 4 months, the first 3 or 4 months here, I guess as well, while you're establishing new friendships and that sort of thing, were really tough. It's I really miss my family so much. And they play such a big role in these sorts of events. They're your biggest support. And I think I love what you said before about it truly is such a team event, and not just your family, but your support crew as well. I think I want to get Maxi on the podcast at some point to have a chat to him, because his insights to what it was like living with me will be very different to, my experience of it. And I think Maxi had night terrors throughout it, and one of the biggest ones was that the motorhome was moving, and I think it was because every day it was just rolling along. I was running at such a slow pace, so he'd wake up almost every night screaming that the motorhome was moving, and I had to get up, tired, hug him, say, mate, it's all good. But your crew are under a lot of stress, and I think sometimes people, they see these things, they want to be a part of the team, which is incredible, but you have to understand it's not an adventure and take the fishing rods. It's we're all in this. This is a team goal, and it's going to be hard.
Absolutely, yeah. Look, sometimes you see the crew and people see the photos on social media and think it's a holiday, but it's anything but. I know on the bike ride particularly, there was someone awake on that trip 24 hours a day. Whether it was me out on the bike, whether it was the bike mechanic servicing the bike, whether it was guys ducking off to town to get water and fuel and washing clothes, and there's just so many things that come up. It's it's in different ways, but equally as tough for your crew.
Yeah, so true. How about now, I guess, looking back, what do you prefer? Obviously not the event itself, but because you've done so much cycling, so much running, if you're to choose one for your own training now, I know obviously right now you're very dialed in with your strength work and obviously more specific in the kayak, but outside of that, what do you prefer, running or cycling?
Oh, I'd have to say running actually. Yeah. I think I've always regarded myself more of a runner than a cyclist, which is funny because the cycle came first. So, but now look, if you gave me a choice now, I'd go for a run.
Yeah, nice. Well, you were able to jump in for about 15 Ks with me as I passed through your hometown, which was unreal, on the Cairns to Melbourne. I loved every minute of that. And so what's sort of like, again, you're dialed in right now with kayaking, but what's your running looked like since the run? Have you done much, or has it really just been, all right, let's rest?
Yeah, it hasn't. Look, prior to that day with you, the longest I'd run was probably 5 or 6 Ks. Wow. Yeah, and that was only, I'd jump in with a client if I was training them, and I'd run. There was no real hunger to go out and run long distances afterwards. The bike has been on the wall in my gym since. I've not even, well, funnily enough, when I got back from the bike ride, the following week, I thought, I'm going to head out for a ride. And I got dressed, got on the bike, and I rode literally 500 metres down the road, and I went, I'm going home. And I've never been back on that particular bike since. And the run, was more, look, I love being outdoors. I love keeping fit. And that was more how I saw running after that, was more of a social pursuit and a keep fit tool rather than, is there another event? To be perfectly honest, I haven't had that desire for either the cycle or the run to do another event in those particular fields. Yeah.
No, it's. I guess that's all part of it. It's probably one of the most common questions I get from people is, you love running so much. What if you do this run around Australia and you hate it on the other side? And that's obviously very, very possible. But I tell people I'm not obsessed with running. I'm obsessed with training. It's not so much running for me. It's movement. And I think that period of not running after my Cairns to Melbourne, or running very little, and just playing some tennis and doing a bit more lateral movement and cross training, that was fun. Getting some weight back on this body that was so skinny afterwards, which happens as we've discussed in these feats. So I think it's really important for people to understand that as long as you are moving, especially for your mental health, it's so important. It doesn't have to be that one sport, and that's how I look at it. I feel like I'm prepared. Obviously, you've got to always weigh up that the positives and negatives. It really is sort of that cost-benefit analysis, but at the same time, it's like, I'm really, really excited for this run. I know it's going to be hard. I feel so grateful, as I said, to have you in my corner, and just to give people even some more context. When I called you probably 6 months ago and said that I want to go for the record, and I did that. I made sure I called you before I posted it on socials. I wanted to do the right thing there. You said, well, mate, you've got my full support. I'll probably be the first person you hug outside of your mum. And I love that. I think that's so special, mate. Yeah,
and look, like I said, I'm excited for it, and I hope I'm there. I know for me, it's Ron Grant, the first man to ever do it, is a dear friend of mine, and he came in and out at various points around the trip, which was such a massive boost to me. And I'll never forget when I ran into Oaks Oval. There was people everywhere, and standing at the finish line was Ron Grant, and he was in tears. Yeah. And I'll never forget that moment. It was so special to me and him, and he gave me a big hug, and that's
incredible.
It's what it's all about.
Because when did Ron Grant do the run around Australia?
1983, I believe it was. Yeah. And he said to him, the same as I feel now towards you, is that it just brought up so many memories for him of how he went about it. And look, so much respect for Ron, because back then no one had ever done it.
Yeah.
And people were saying it's impossible, and if you attempt it, you're going to die.
Yeah.
It can't be done. So he was next level again in my eyes, because it had never done. And we've just, to this day, we've got this mutual respect. Ron turned 80 last week, and just that mutual respect that we have for each other. And I think, it's such a small field of people that take this stuff on and are prepared to hurt so much to make it happen. I just believe we've got to stick together and help each other.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, you're stubborn, you're naive, you're all of these things, which is so cool, because you wouldn't be doing it otherwise, right?
Yeah, that's right, mate. And it's it doesn't matter what your goal is or what your pursuit is in life. It's being prepared to leave your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about it. Anything we've ever done in life, I can guarantee to your listeners that there's something they've done that they're really proud of in their life, and I bet they had to leave their comfort zone to achieve it.
So true. Yeah, when you do look back and reflect, it's like it's never the easy things. It's always when you've had that grit and persevered through. Yeah, so well said. Mate, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on this podcast. If people want to connect with you, where should they find you and get in touch?
Yeah, look, I'm the world's worst on the socials, but that's the easiest place to find me. Mindset, Health and Fitness. So, look, people can jump on there on Insta and Facebook. And look, it's, we're starting posting now, and it's about following the journey now. So the build up, what's happening with trials. In April, I've got a 100-kilometre trial coming up, so we're hoping to get some footage from that. But look, it's a big thing. I love that support. So if people want to come on and follow those pages and feel as though they're part of it, or reach out and they want some advice on their own challenges, whatever that may be, then that'd be awesome.
Yeah, well said. What would your advice be if someone was wanting to plan and take on a project of their own?
Look, go for it. Yeah, absolutely go for it. It's amazing. I think the biggest learning for me out of all of this stuff has been what the human body is actually capable of if we test it, right? If you'd have said to me 15 years ago I was going to be doing this, the guy that used to come last in the school cross country and couldn't run 5Ks, that I'd be doing what I do now, honestly, I would have laughed. It was crazy. It's believe in yourself. The first part of the puzzle is the mindset. You've got to get that right and form that goal, get a group of people around you that support you and believe in you, and have that self-belief, have that real self-belief that you can do this and go out and make it happen.
Yeah, I love it. So well said. It is. It's I guess belief comes from, like, you can outwork your self-doubts, and that's probably one of the biggest things that I've found is, like, I had a conversation recently with one of my mates, and he said to me, he's like, mate, I get it, like, I know who you are, but at the same point, he's like, how do you have the confidence to just go out and say you're going to run around Australia? Like, where does that come from? And I sort of answered it by saying, well, I don't know, just don't really feel much self-doubt with running. And that was how I answered it. But then I was driving home from the coffee and I was like, well, that's not true. Like, I did have, and I've outworked it. Like, I honestly, I believe in myself so much through those reps, and that's what's possible. And it's not just running, but any area of life. If you do enough of it, you're gonna outwork your self-doubts, and that self-belief really, really comes. So yeah, it's definitely an area of my life that I don't have a lot of self-doubts because I've worked at it, and that would be my advice to others as well. Like you said, go for it because it will get easier. Obviously, the challenges that you put in front of yourself, they get harder because you want to keep growing, which is awesome. That's all part of life. But at the same time, you attack it with a much clearer and stronger mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just, you don't realise it at the time, but, people are watching and listening and they're hearing this. And if you can inspire someone and give them the courage to go out and whatever it is and take it on, then that's what it's all about, hey?
Yeah, absolutely. If you had to pick one, it might be too hard to, I don't know, but if you had to pick one, what was better, what was more enjoyable, the run or the ride around Australia?
Oh, I'll give you the politician's answer here because I don't really know. Look, the bike ride was harder in terms of sleep deprivation. It was anywhere between 15 to 20 hours a day on the bike. So the sleep deprivation and the sheer exhaustion was off the charts.
So what, sleep total 2 hours, 3 hours a night?
3, yeah. If I was lucky, I got 4 hours in a 24-hour period. Like, it was, and to push your body that hard and have to back up. I went to sleep several times on the bike, had micro sleeps. That was the toughest bit. Didn't crash, but yeah, would go into the gravel and wake up and be like, hey.
Yeah.
That was the toughest bit on the bike. The run was just that level of pain and soreness, which was off the charts again. And having to back up, getting out of bed was like a 10, 15-minute process, and the thought of running was just like your worst nightmare, but you had to find your reason why and get out and do it. So I think physically tougher, The run, absolutely. And because it was 6 months, not 6 weeks, the run was definitely tougher physically. Mentally and fatigue, the bike.
Yeah. And I think one of my favourite ultra endurance athletes as well is the Iron Cowboy. I don't know if you know him, but he's obviously huge. He's done 101 Ironmans in 101 days and 50 Ironmans in 50 days in 50 states of the US. And I was lucky enough to get a message from him on my Cairns to Melbourne run.
Yeah, wow.
One of my friends lined that up because he knew I'm a big fan of him, and yeah, I'll play the message in this podcast so people can hear it. But basically, it was along the lines of stay focused every day, and I think that's so true. It's like, well done so far, but stay focused every single day because there's going to be challenges every single day, and it's like life. Don't look too far ahead. And anytime you take on these big challenges, it is literally a day-by-day approach.
It is, mate, and it's kind of like a light switch for me is when, you know, day to day I'm pretty casual, cruisy guy, but when I go out and take on these events, and the crew have often said this to me, it's like, and my wife has said this to me, it's like this light switch goes off and they can just see that you're in that zone, you know, and you've got to be in that zone where nothing's going to stop you. If it's raining, if it's 50 degrees, if it's snowing, it's regardless, you're in the zone, you've got a job to do, and you go out and do it.
You tap into that mindset. It's like David Goggins often refers to it as that's Goggins and then there's David Goggins.
Yeah, yeah, and that's literally what it is. Yeah, yeah. It's almost like there's that split personality, and you've got to go out there and have that single-minded focus to achieve it.
Yeah, well said. Well, mate, as I said before, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. I think you'll have given so many people inspiration today, and I can't thank you enough for all of your support of me over the past 5 years now. It's so exciting that the run's going to finally happen next year, and I can't wait for it. I know it's going to be hard, but I know you'll be right there with me. So, mate, good luck with your journey this year, this next adventure. I can't wait to follow that as well, and I'm hoping that I can get down there as well. So I'll be back in Melbourne, living in Melbourne. I'll be closer to where the Murray River is, and I'm going to make the trip to come and watch some of it or help out however I can. That'd be awesome.
I'd love to have you there, mate. It's been a pleasure chatting with you, and I'm in your corner.
Legend, Dave. Thanks again.